Allegan County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hello, I'm at a church right here on Blue Star Highway.
Okay, do you know which church?
No, I think the address is 128.
128th and what? What cross street?
I really don't know at the church. But I'm calling because I want to turn myself in for a murder that I committed 2 nights ago.
Thank you for joining me on 13 Plus. I'm Cali Lichter, and this is On the Docket, a weekly recap of crime in court and in around the state of Michigan. This week, we're taking it back to March 2024, when 25-year-old Ruby Garcia was left for dead along a busy Grand Rapids highway, shot in the head multiple times. Her killer took her car, ran over her body, and then fled. Her family left to grieve the 25-year-old woman's life cut short, while her West Michigan community and the country question how her killer was in the country in the first place. All of that and more is on the docket. Ruby's love for plants and traveling came nothing close to her affectionate smile that illuminated the room, or contagious laughter that recreated the atmosphere, reads Ruby Garcia's obituary. On the night of March 22, 2024, a lieutenant with the Kent County Sheriff's Department was on patrol when he saw something, or rather someone, lying near the shoulder on US 131 by the Leonard Street exit.
I was actually ending my shift on my way in at midnight, just on my way in. That's my normal route I was taking in that night. It was actually on the phone, talking to another deputy. I just kind of noticed it out of the corner of my eye. It was dark. It was late at night, obviously. I saw it. It just kind of took a second to register in my head what it was. So I backed up in the roadway, got behind it, moved over, and noticed the body.
What specific lane were you in when you noticed the body?
I was actually in the inside left lane. The body was on the right-hand shoulder.
There were no footprints or tire tracks around Ruby, face down on the road and missing a shoe.
I did at one point pull the hood back to see there was a large amount of blood. Actually, from underneath the hood, when you pulled it back, the steam rolled up from her body fluids because it was a cold night. It's probably one of the last snowfalls we had that day.
Around her body, investigators found pieces of red paint, which matched Ruby's red 2023 Mazda 3 that her family said was missing. Also around her body was her cell phone and an unspent bullet.
There were multiple gunshot wounds that were identified, 4 total separate areas of gunshot wounds, 2 in the head, the right hand, and the left upper arm. Yes, I would characterize it as a defensive wound in that because there's soot, we know that the hand was close to the end of the barrel of the gun when the shot was fired, so the hand could have been reaching out for the barrel, or could have been potentially covering a part of the face, for instance, when a shot is fired.
During the investigation, it was learned Ruby was in a relationship with 25-year-old Brandon Ortiz-Vite. Text messages showed Ortiz-Vite and Ruby had met up about an hour before the murder on March 22nd. A day after Ruby was killed, on March 23rd, her red Mazda was found abandoned in the South Haven area. The car had damage, believed to be bullet holes and bloodstains inside, but it wasn't quite clear how the car got there. That question would be answered on March 24th, when a 911 call came into Allegan County Dispatch.
I'm not going to go to the scene. I'm going to stay here. I want to face this.
It was Ruby's boyfriend, Brandon Ortiz-Vite, calling to confess to her murder from a church on Blue Star Highway.
I know what I did was wrong, and I'll do the time. I just don't want to die inside.
Ortiz-Vite told the dispatcher he was cooperating and wouldn't leave the church. He also admitted the gun he used to shoot Ruby, a 9mm Taurus pistol which he obtained illegally, was still in his possession. When law enforcement arrived, he said he would put the gun on the ground. But why did he turn himself in?
Just ask you one big favor, please.
Yeah, what's that?
I don't When I turn myself in, I know they're going to kill me in jail. They're going to try to kill me. Can I be in solitary?
He felt if he ran for too long, someone was going to put a hit on him, a fear that manifested even as he was in custody.
How's it going, Brandon? Yeah, I'm going to talk to you here in just a second.
When law enforcement surrounded the church, they found Ortiz-Vite with blood on his clothes.
I'm turning myself in because I did a horrible crime.
Okay.
And I know I have to face,
Yeah.
Anything.
Okay.
But I've gotten word already that the victim's family wants to take justice into their own hands.
Okay.
And I know I'm involved in gangs.
Okay.
And I know once I get into general population, there's a hit on me already.
In a recorded confession to Michigan State Police in one of their vehicles, Ortiz-Vite told detectives he lied to the church so they would give him a place to stay, telling them he was recently fired from his job.
And yeah, I told her that I was recently fired from a job.
Okay. And she said you could come over here and stay?
Yeah.
Okay.
He knew if he kept on driving along the main highways, he would run out of gas, which is why he discarded the car around South Haven.
I had to face the music. I know what I did was a horrible thing.
Yeah.
But I also fear for my life.
Also, during the confession, Ortiz-Vite explained what happened before he killed Ruby and then left her for dead on the side of the highway. Ortiz-Vite thought Ruby wanted to end their relationship, which his roommate said had been going on for about a year. The night of her murder, they met at her apartment complex, and Ortiz-Vite said they talked in her red Mazda for quite some time. When Ruby wanted the conversation to end, Ortiz-Vite said she decided to drive him home and got onto US 131. But Ortiz-Vite admitted he did not want the conversation to stop. That's when he yanked the steering wheel, causing Ruby to pull over and park on the shoulder.
She refused and continued to tell him to get out of the car. He continued to refuse to get out of the car, at which time Ms. Garcia took out her cell phone. Mr. Ortiz interpreted that as she was going to then call law enforcement. I asked him to clarify if she explicitly said she was going to call the police, and he didn't recall that, but he interpreted that as she was going to call the police. He attempted to retrieve the phone from her to prevent that phone call. Then began a physical altercation. She hit him. He hit her back. He was unable to pull the phone from her. And during that altercation, he remembered that he had his handgun with him. I believe he said it was instinct that he then reached for the gun and then shot her multiple times from inside the vehicle.
The detective who questioned him in the car testified that Ortiz-Vite thought Ruby was still alive after the shots and that her hands were moving.
And that's when he decided to shoot her one more time. He believed it was in the head.
Ortiz-Vite told detectives he unbuckled Ruby and put her on the road, driving off with her Mazda.
This afternoon, we filed a number of criminal charges against Brandon Ortiz-Vite, age 25. He was charged with 1 count of felony murder. Felony murder is a maximum penalty of life in prison without the possibility of parole. We filed 1 count of open murder charges. An open murder charge is a maximum penalty of life in prison, possibly with the possibility of parole. The third charge would be 1 count of carjacking. That also is a life maximum. The fourth charge is carrying a concealed weapon, a felony with a maximum penalty of 5 years in prison. And the last charge is 1 count of felony firearm, the use of a firearm in the commission of a felony, specifically a homicide. That is a 2-year maximum penalty consecutive to any the underlying felony that he was convicted of.
Within days of Ortiz-Vite getting arrested, charges were pressed against him by Kent County prosecutor Chris Becker. During a press conference announcing the charges, Becker repeatedly said how this case was one of domestic violence.
I think, anytime, we don't want to see this happen. This is the ultimate, the worst case domestic violence scenario. And generally, you see an escalation at least. It's not the first time that somebody just all of a sudden hauls off and kills their significant other.
But nationally, the case was seen in a different light. Even though this was not the first case of domestic violence Kent County has ever seen, it was about to become a campaign's speaking point in one of the most historic elections in U.S. history.
Session, Honorable Angela T. Ross presiding. You may be seated. Good morning.
Not one more innocent life should be lost to Biden migrant crime. The first step to restoring safety in America is to fire crooked Joe Biden, get him out November 5th, and we're going to get him out. We're going to have more people voting, I think, than anybody can even imagine.
Conservatives and then presidential candidate Donald Trump felt the case was about failures at the border.
We're going to deliver justice for Ruby. We're going to watch what happens with this thug.
According to the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Ortiz-Vite was in the United States illegally. An ICE spokesperson said Ortiz-Vite was from Mexico and was previously deported in 2020. He was previously approved for the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, more commonly known as DACA, before his deportation. At some point, which could not be pinpointed, he came back into the United States. During campaign stops in Kent County by Trump, he criticized how Ruby's death could have been prevented if Ortiz-Vite hadn't been able to come back to the U.S.
They said she had just this most contagious laughter, and when she walked into a room, she lit up that room. And I've heard that from so many people. I spoke to some of her family.
While Trump claimed he spoke to the Garcia family after her death, the family spokesperson, Ruby Garcia, says Trump never reached out to anyone in her family. Garcia's death also prompted lawmakers and members of Michigan's Republican Party to call for an increase in border security.
This was avoidable. It's why we really do need to secure our border. We're in favor of immigration, but let's manage our immigration process. Personally, I'm an immigrant. My parents immigrated. We came through a process, and that's what we need to get back to.
Not everyone agreed with Ruby's death being used for political reasons. Shortly after her death, the CEO of YWCA West Central Michigan sat down with 13 on Your Side and said the focus of Ruby's death should not be on the status of the perpetrator.
I think the focus is on the wrong thing. Domestic violence has been a problem in our community for generations. As long as the focus is on immigration, we also have a problem and perhaps a silencing effect, a chilling effect on those people who may be seeking support, because as human beings, it doesn't matter where you come from. As a human being, you deserve safety and protection.
Puertas Abiertas, a Grand Rapids organization that focuses on providing health and legal support to survivors of domestic violence in Kent County's Latino communities, echoed those sentiments.
It's frustrating when they said it's an immigration thing, it's a, undocumented person. That is not the real thing. It's very fun to point it out when it's needed. The problem is that this is a health problem.
And Gonzalo Peralta, an attorney for the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, said there is a stigmatization and conflation between immigration status and perpetrating violence.
And the majority of immigrant communities don't act in this manner. This is not the common occurrence. So by saying, yes, you're concerned about the victim, but then by connecting the status of the victimizer with the act of victimizing, that's where you have the problem, because then in the minds of the people hearing the message are connecting the two, and that's just not the reality.
Good afternoon, Ms. Ladies. Mr.
Ortiz-Vite had until September 23, 2024 to accept the Kent County prosecutor's plea deal. That agreement, according to the prosecutor, was for him to plead guilty to second-degree murder, carjacking, carrying a concealed weapon, and felony firearm. If he pleaded guilty, Becker said he would face around a minimum 30 to 37 years in prison plus 2 for felony firearm. And on the following Monday, Ortiz-Vite avoided having his case go to trial.
And how do you plead on these counts? Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
And are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes, I am, Your Honor.
And are your pleas free and voluntary?
Yes.
Sir, is it true this happened in the state of Michigan in Kent County?
On November 11th, 8 months after Ortiz-Vite admitted he murdered Ruby, he appeared in a Kent County Circuit courtroom to face his sentence. But before Judge Mark Trusock could sentence Ortiz-Vite, his attorney asked the judge not to consider the narrative surrounding the case or commercials that used her client's face.
In addition to all that, Your Honor, I would ask that the court not take into consideration the narrative spun by both the media and political campaigns in this case, and taking his immigration status into account. I'd ask that you not do that.
Well, counsel, I've been doing this for 18 years. I don't think I rely on what the press has to say to make my decisions in sentencing.
Before learning his sentence, the judge gave Ortiz-Vite the chance to address the court. He chose to read from a letter.
As I wrote these words, I was overwhelmed on what to say. For now, I will only say what is necessary. To begin with, I want to apologize to my community, my Latino, Hispanic, Mexican community. I am a proud Mexican national whose actions have brought great shame and dishonor to our people who come to the United States in search for a better living, a dream that I have taken for granted, which has filled my heart with shame. The actions I took on the night of March 22nd do not define who my people are. I apologize with the utmost respect to all immigrants from all walks of life. I want to apologize to my family and friends who may not be present but are praying for me. I have let them down and I have failed them. I know that right now my words hold little, if any, value to the Garcia family, which is understandable. As a man, I stand before you humbly, full of guilt and shame, for unrightfully, unjustifiably taking the most valuable gift granted to us all, life. I make no excuse for my behavior. I do, however, realize how drug abuse and not understanding how to identify your emotions alters the mind's ability to make sound decisions. My shame as a man comes from the inability to control my emotions. I can't explain my mind that night. However, deep down within, I knew I was wrong. The moments leading up to me turning myself in were spent in a church, not making me a saint, but evidence to myself that I was still human, that God never abandons you even in your darkest hour. It sparked this glimmer of hope, and that's something I've never felt. I could have easily blown my brains out, but I wanted to accept my responsibility for my actions. After all, I am a man. Sobre todo, le quiero pedir de corazón sincero y derrotado a la familia García que perdone mis acciones. No necesariamente a mi persona, pero a esos hechos de ese día, para un día lograr sanar ambos. Si me entregué y confesé mis hechos, fueron por el amor que le tuve a la señorita García. Estoy dispuesto a aceptar todo lo que venga frente de mí, pero que quede claro, aquí no va a venir nadie a poner un precio a mi cabeza. Por eso estoy dispuesto a morir. Humildemente su servidor. Gracias.
After Ortiz-Vite read his statement, Judge Trusock had some words of his own. He recognized Ortiz-Vite had prior misdemeanors, had been in jail at least twice, and had previously been on probation. He also pointed out that this was a very violent crime. Not only did Ortiz-Vite shoot Ruby, but the shots were to her chin, left temple, upper arm, hand, and head.
This was a situation, sir, where you took the life of Ruby Garcia, who was a young lady who had everything in front of her. You were arguing with her. This was on US 131. You ended up shooting her multiple times. She was shot in the chin, the left temple, the upper arm, the hand, the head. And you started shooting when you were in the car, and then you took her out of the car, put the gun to her head, and pulled the trigger and shot her again. There is just no justification or excuse for this. Your sentencing guidelines call for a minimum sentence between 171 months and 285 months, also 19 to 38 months, or 270 months to 450 months on the second-degree murder, and that's a range of 22.5 years to 37.5 years for your minimum sentence. There is an agreement that your attorney reached with the prosecutor in this morning that I will, in this incident, that I will follow, and that is that you would first receive 2 years on the felony firearm, and then somewhere in a range of 30 to 37 years on your minimum sentence on the second-degree murder. This, sir, was a cold-blooded, intentional killing. This young lady was shot several times and then you put the gun right to her head and pulled the trigger. There is just no reason for this, no justification, no excuse whatsoever. You, sir, are a cold-blooded murderer. This is an intentional crime, and you are a danger to society. You are a very violent individual, and you need to be removed from society.
Ortiz-Vite was sentenced to the high end of his guidelines, at least 39 years in prison for the killing of Ruby Garcia. He could potentially serve up to 102 years, that is, if he isn't deported, a possible reality after he serves his nearly 4-decade minimum prison sentence. Outside of the courtroom, Prosecutor Becker said the judge made the right decision.
We were very pleased. I mean, that's exactly what the family was looking for. They wanted something on the higher side of the guidelines, and it wasn't the higher side, it was the highest. You know, he'll be doing 39 years as a minimum. That's about it. That's as most he could do under the plea agreement, so very satisfied, and it was been a tough road for the family, and I think they're happy it's over.
And reiterated the crime had nothing to do with Ortiz-Vite's citizenship status.
Yeah, no question. I mean, and that's both the last two involving, that seems to be the focus, is that there's an illegal, there's somebody here but it's a domestic case. So I think that's something that, especially for me, and looking at what we're trying to do with the domestic violence court, is trying to combat these types of instances. And it's not just they're not the only ones. It's not illegals that are doing this. It can happen to anybody. Domestic is an issue that happens across the board, be it socioeconomic, race, gender. I mean, we've had a number of admissions of females in the domestic violence court. So domestic violence homicide is a huge issue right now, and I think that gets a little bit lost in what happened here, because those are the two we've had and have to deal with.
While in prison for at least 4 decades, Judge Trusock had a piece of advice for Ortiz-Vite. Reflect on taking Ruby's life.
Sir, I hope every single night you think about the damage that you did to this family and what you did to this young lady. Please take him out of here. I didn't assess the fine.
After Ruby's death, the community rallied around her family, raising over $19,000 via GoFundMe to bury her, and a Grand Rapids cemetery donated a burial plot for her.
And I reached out to the sister just on a public post that she made and let her know what I do and what we do out here, and I'd be happy to help and get a burial lot gifted to them for Ruby to be laid to rest. Even after all of this passes, they will be still left grieving the loss and the tragedy that they've gone through. So there's funeral home expenses, there's a memorial expense, there's burial expenses, and there's a lot of things that go along with when something happens like this, especially unexpectedly. I want the community to know about the Garcia family, that their story needs to be heard. The community is behind them, and I want them to know that they're not alone.
Her family said at the end of the GoFundMe that this is forever Ruby's world. Thanks for joining me on this special episode of On the Docket on 13+. We have new episodes releasing every week, taking you into the courtroom for the latest updates and deep dives on crime in and around West Michigan. In the meantime, we will bring you the latest on crime in court, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com. And when breaking news affects you and your community, we stream live on 13+ with what you need to know right when you need to know. We'll see you next time with updates on what's on the docket.